Welcome guys, I'll be showing you how to draft the pattern for the bow tie fabric itself. So the first thing we will do will be to draw a straight line. The dimensions of the bow tie fabric is actually 5 inches by 2.5. After drawing the straight line, I'll decide whether to make the 5 inches vertical or horizontal. So depending on the space of this pattern paper, I'll be making the 2.5 inches vertical and the 5 inches horizontal. So I'll mark 2.5 inches all through like that, and after marking, I'll join all those mark points with a straight line, and that will be the height of the bow tie after we are done folding. Then I will make a perpendicular straight line to both lines like that. So you could see I used my T-square in doing that. You can also use your set square because your set square has 3 different angles. It has 90, 60 and 30. So using your set square would give you a perfect angle 90. So you can place it like that and just draw your line. So you could see the lines are the same. So from that, I'll take my 5 inches mark and on doing that, I've succeeded in creating the size of the bow tie. But every other thing matters, so I'll divide that into 2, which is 2.5. So that 2.5 inches I would also be transferring to the left and the right. So I'll transfer the 2.5 to the right. And I would also give a 1/2 inch for the sewing allowance. And all these things I'm transferring to the left and right are what will be folded to the back side of the bow tie. So I would also add 1/2 inch for the sewing allowance on the other side. Now the bow tie would also have what will be folded on top and below. So I would also add as much as 3/4 inch. So the half of 2.5 should be considered. You must not add anything that is bigger than the half of 2.5. So I added 3/4 inch on the upper part as well. Then I would also join. I would also join those sides as well like that. What I've done now is I've succeeded in creating everything that has to do with the bow tie itself. So I'll be making a line for the part that will contain the adjustable rings, and that is just a line that will be about 21.5 inches long and 2 inches high. So I mark 2 inches on that side. So if I'm to use my angle 90 once more, I'll just create a line that I'll take my measurement on. So I just use a broken fence line, and I'll put my tape through and mark my 2 inches. Then I'll join like that. Then I'll take the actual length I want, which is 21.5. So you do that for the upper part, and you also do that for the down part. Then you join both together. Then the last but not least, the centerpiece. So for the centerpiece, you just create a straight line. It must not be more than 3/4 inch wide. 1/2 inch is mostly preferable. Then you must make sure it is no more than 4 inches long. So after doing that, I will just cut off. Everything I'm cutting off, I will explain to you how it works. The most important thing you just need to know is the real dimension of the bow tie is 5 inches by 2.5 inches. Now most of the things we cut off we'll be cutting the fabric to be exactly the same size except the center piece. So for the center piece, it will be wider than what we cut off. So for the piece that will contain the adjustable rings, we'll end up folding into two like that, and we'll do that all through before we actually sew. So I'll go straight to the cutting of the fabric. So we're done with the pattern paper. But before we go straight to the fabric, let me just show you how it works. So for the upper part, you fold the excesses like that. You also fold the excesses of the down part, which makes the height of the folding 2.5 inches. Then for the part you will be stitching, you also fold the 1/2 inches on both sides. Then you fold the 5 inches mark. What this actually means is you sew first, then you bend the upper and the down part. So that's just that. So that's how it will look like when you're done creating the bow tie with the fabric. So then you bend and use your center piece to cross it. So after showing you the prototype of how it works, we'll go straight to the cutting of the fabric itself. Now for the fabric, there will be something that will be inside the fabric, and you can use a wording or that lighter one I actually showed you first. If you're using a wording, you don't need two, you just need one, because a wording is very thick. So you put one inside the upper piece, then the other piece would not contain a wording, because for the bow tie fabric you'll be cutting two pieces. Those two pieces will be exactly of the same size. Now the wording we cut is also 2.5 by 5 inches. So for the center piece, you could see the fabric after folding into two is still 1/2 inch wider than what we actually cut. But for the bow tie fabric itself, there will be exactly the same size as that of the pattern paper. So you could see what I was explaining, and I'll be doing all that using the pressing iron. And those are the wordings. So for the part that will contain the adjustable rings, I will just trim to the same length as that of the pattern fabric we cut. So the fabric is also the same size. So the fabric is the same size with what we cut off. Now straight to the pressing table, you fold the 3/4 inches on the upper part. After folding the 3/4 inch on the upper part, you will bend by 2.5 inches just to be sure. But after bending, what should be folded on the down part had to be 3/4 inch. But just to be sure, you will bend, checking your 2.5 inches mark all through. So after bending 3/4 inch on both sides, the height of the folding is now 2.5 inches. Then you bend your 1/2 inch. So before then, you bend 3 inches. That is 2.5 plus the 1/2 inch for sewing on the left. You'd also bend 3 inches on the other side. So on doing this, you'll discover that both will actually cross each other. So after that, you fold one part by 1/2 inch outward like that, or you just bend both together to know where it meets and sew. But to be sure, after doing it like this, you open it up, use your pressing iron to create a line. So when you are sewing, you are actually sure of the exact position you should be sewing. So you use your pressing iron to create a line, and that line will actually be where you will sew on. So what we did for one part will be what we'll do for the other part. So that's that. So these are the three adjustable rings. Two of the rings are meant to hook each other, while the one that contains three lines is what makes it actually adjustable, and I'll be showing you how to fix it. But the first thing we'll do is to fold on the wrong side and make a half-inch stitch from the edge. So you stitch like that from the beginning to the end. After stitching, we'll trim excesses just to make sure the turning process is actually easy. So on trimming the excesses, I will use this pen close to me here to just push it outwards. After doing that, I'll still be going to the pressing table to press that on the sewing line. Then the next thing I'll do is to sew the bow tie fabric itself. So you just make sure both lines align. The folding line for the 2.5 inches aligns on the upper and the down part. Then you sew on that half-inch line you actually bend. You do the same for the other bow tie piece as well, making sure both lines of the 2.5 inches folding aligns. Then you sew on the half-inch meant for sewing. So on doing this, it becomes very easy to just bend. You might not even need to go to the pressing table to do any pressing. So with your hands, you can just open the seam, the sewing line, and just turn to the other side. For this tutorial, we'll be using only one of the wordings. We're not using two wordings, so only one part of the bow tie piece would contain the wording. So I'll be fixing the wording after I open the seam allowance. So to fix the wording, I'll be using the lighter one. So you just cover it up following the initial dimensions like that. Since the wording is also exactly the same measurement with that of the final outcome of the folding of the bow tie, so you just fold exactly the way you folded the first bow tie piece. And while folding, you must make sure the seams are open because it makes bending very easy. So once the seam lines are open, it makes bending it very easy. So you can see I'm not actually even using a pressing iron to do anything. Everything is just totally done with my hands. And that is as a result of our initial bending with the pressing iron. So the part that contains the sewing line will be the part that will face each other. You don't want your sewing line showing outside. So after bending like this, I will use something to just tie it, and this is just to make it familiar with the bending process, so that when I'm ready to bend, it will not be harder for me to bend. So for the centerpiece, I'll just make my half-inch stitch. So I'll just make my half-inch stitch like that. I would also trim like I did for the part that will contain the adjustables. Then I will use my pen to turn it outwards. After which I'll go to the pressing table, use the pressing iron to straighten the part that will contain the adjustable rings, and the centerpiece on the sewing line. So before I do this, I'm just showing you what it will look like. I have to still go to the pressing table to press that centerpiece. So this is what it looks like. You place the part that contains the ring in between the centerpiece, then you use the centerpiece to cover it and use your hand needles to stitch it up. Those are the three adjustable rings, and we'll go straight to the workings. So after pressing, and my bow tie is already familiar with the folding, I'll just place the centerpiece around it like that. Then I'll insert it into the openings like that. So one will enter the part and the other will enter the other part. Then it is the folded edges of both parts that will be stitched up using my hand needle. My hand needle is a very big one. I couldn't get a smaller one, so it will be a more difficult process hemming compared to a smaller needle. So you just hem, making sure you don't actually catch the parts that would contain the adjustable rings. So after doing like that, I'll just tie it up. Then the continuous stitching process is just straightforward. So I'll insert the needle, then I'll round it up like that once, then drag it out. So after piercing the needle through it, I'll round it up, then drag it out. For the final stitching, I'll round it up twice. So after getting to the final edge, I'll round it up twice, then drag it out. After dragging it out, I'll just cut off the excesses. So that's just that. So that's the bow tie, and this is the standard measurement of a bow tie used for formal purposes. If you have other reasons for making bow tie, you can do it using a different dimension. Some do it as big as somebody's head. So let's go straight to the making of, or should I say the fixing of the adjustable rings. So the first thing to do is to trim off the edges to make sure it is not hairy. So like I said, two parts of the rings are meant for hook. So we are working on the adjustable part. So you pass it into one hole, then you pass it into the other hole as well. So after doing that, you will now adjust it as long as 6 inches from the edge. Then this part is very technical now. You pass it through the hook. After passing it through the hook, you will now pass it through the center of that part like that. You use your needle to force it in, and you have to be careful while it's doing this, making sure your fabric is not the kind that just get pierced easily when you trying to use the needle. So after passing it through it like that, you now close it up, then you stitch. And you would also use your hand needle to stitch, but that is when we start stitching. For the other part, you just close it up like that, fold it and stitch. That's actually straightforward. Then you hook. So after stitching, I'll be showing you things. The main thing to show you is how the adjustable rings actually work. That is how you adjust to increase or reduce. But before then, let's go back to the hemming process of the hook. So you just fold into two like that, and you use your hand needle to hem. The technique in hemming is just to make sure the hemming thread don't actually show on the front part. So once you pass the thread, you make sure you are passing it back on the same position. So you just do this for like 3 or 4 different points on that edge like that. So after doing that, you just make sure it doesn't show that much on the front part, and that's just the technique behind it. So when we are done, like I explained earlier, to give your final hemming, you pass the needle, then you round it twice and drag. So after rounding it twice and drag, you just cut. So we'll go back to the hemming of the part we passed through the adjustable ring. So for that part, for this part, we'll just fold it like that and pierce. So it's just the same process. When you pass it, you make sure you follow the same position you passed it outwards, back inwards. So for the first passing, we didn't actually tie the edge of the thread, so I'll go straight to just using the excesses inwards to tie it up. So after knotting the thread like that, you just start the hemming process. So you don't really need to hem all through. You can just decide to hem 2 or 3 different positions firmly. So if you can do that, you are done. So you could see me passing the needle inside that folding to the other end. So I passed it inside to the other end before I even continue my hemming. So I'll be hemming only 2 positions. So I'll just follow that part outwards like that. So I'll pierce my needle outwards, then I'll follow that position I came outwards back inwards. So I'll follow that position back inwards, then I will just do my final hemming. So as you can see, I only hem 2 different positions. After which I'll just cut. Then after doing this, I've succeeded in creating the bow tie. So everything is actually set. The only thing I'll be showing you now is how the adjustable ring works. So the easy part is just to close it up like that when you have adjusted to your desired length, that is the length, or should I say the width of your neck. But to actually show you how it works, the first thing I'll do will be to take this measurement. So this is an average measurement of an adult neck, that is, we are talking 16, 15 and a half. I'm talking of the tight measurement of the neck now. So to increase it, you just bring out that adjustable part like that, then you drag, you bring out and you drag. So on doing this, you have actually succeeded in increasing the length of that part like that. So from 16 or 15 and a half, which we had earlier, we would have taken it as far as 17. So that is just how it works. So if I'm to check the measurement again, I'm sure what I'll be getting will be way bigger than 15. So you could see I'm getting something close to even 19. So this is a one size fit all kind of bow tie. So when you make this bow tie, you don't actually say it's for a child or for an adult. It's a one size fits all.